Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the 2019 ceremony to honor 3 living treasures today. My name is Kyle Wheeler, and I will be the MC today in the absence of Bob Thompson, who usually is the moderator, but he is busy his wife is being given an award, so he can't be here today. So I got the job. So the first thing I would ask you to do is to silence your cell phone. But I'm going to hang on to mine because I have a timer on it. And one of our goals today is to be done by 3:30 so that we can have time for the reception so you all can enjoy and mingle with our honorees in the little reception area right out here after the ceremony. This ceremony marks the beginning of the 3rd decade of ceremonies in Los Alamos. I would like to acknowledge that the local Living Treasures was spearheaded by the late Rosalie Heller, who was an integral leader of the organization until shortly before her death a few years ago. From the beginning, Karen Nielsen Brandt worked with Rosalie to form an all-volunteer board, and Karen is still serving on the board today in a substantial role. Jim Gauthier has been the photographer of all the Living Treasures portraits, and Marilyn Stevens has done the calligraphy since the first ceremony in 1999. I would like to acknowledge 2 people who served on the board for quite a few years and have recently resigned, Dale Arnink and Sarah Rochester. 2 new members have just joined the board, John Fitzpatrick and Wayne Hardy, and we look forward to their contributions. The members of the board are listed in your program, and I ask those board members who are here to please take a moment and stand. Thank you. If anybody has questions about the process for nominating people to become a Living Treasure, please feel free to contact any member of the board. The board would also like to thank our sponsors for all the help they do to help with the expenses. These include the Los Alamos National Bank and individuals in the community who have made contributions. Our goal today is to honor 3 remarkable men. I hope you've had a chance to read the long-form biographies that were printed by the Monitor and the Daily Post and also posted on their websites. They're like this. We have some extra copies available today. If you didn't receive a copy, they're out here on one of the low benches just as you leave the hall. The short forms of the biographies are printed in your program. Even the long form biography only scratches the surfaces of what these men have done for our community. And I hope that many of you, family and friends, who have known these men over the years, will have anecdotes that you will want to share with us today. We also want to acknowledge, to allow enough time for the reception afterward so that everyone will have a chance to mingle and reunite with the treasures and their families. So I respectfully ask that if you do have comments to make, and we hope you do, that you'll keep them brief. I had the pleasure of interviewing these 3 men, so I want to say a few words about each one. All 3 of them moved here a long time ago. Joe in the 50s and Bob and Denny in the early 70s. All 3 are scientists and worked for the lab. And all 3 raised their families here and decided to stay here when they retired. We'll start today with Robert Benjamin. One of the things that struck me about Bob is that he worked part-time while his children were young, so he could be with them while they were growing up. This was unusual at that time, and it probably still is today. I know a lot of professional women who worked part-time when their children were young, but Bob was the first man I've met who did this during a time when it was almost unheard of. He is devoted to children, and not just his own, and he wants to teach them about another one of his passions, science. Bob is well known in the community for writing plays. Not all of them are produced on stage, but many are presented as readings at the senior centers. His plays entertain and spark conversation, and everything he does as a playwright here in Los Alamos, he does as a volunteer. After Bob's wife Susan was diagnosed with cancer, he became involved in support groups in Santa Fe and helped launch a caregiver support group in Los Alamos. These are but a few of the things that he shared with me during our interview. I'm sure those of you here today who would like to share a few more things about Bob in our audience would like a few minutes to speak. So I would ask, if you have something you'd like to share about Bob, that you come up and take a place in one of these seats, and then we'll just call you up and do your thing. So just come on up, it'll make things go quickly. And then anybody who wants to say anything, please come to the mic and speak into the microphone. By the way, can you hear us back there? Okay, good. It sounds like you can. Pat?
Hi everybody, my name is Pat Beck. I'm an actor, and I am, what else am I? A retiree from the lab, and I'm an FOB, a friend of Bob's. So I have a lot to say, but because we're limited in time, I'm going to hit the highlights. And you've read a lot about what I would elaborate on. But Bob became known to me as a playwright whose works actually focused on issues of relevance to seniors. His works have been produced not only here, but in New York and Arizona. And of course, he has taken on the leadership role in presenting short play readings, and now they're getting a little longer, but short play readings at the Senior Center. And these have always been designed to educate the senior citizenry in issues related to aging that they can discuss, and also to the joys of live theater. So hopefully to get the audience to engage in other audiences. He asked the Los Alamos Little Theater to help him because the Senior Center wanted him to do the plays all the time. And he just did not have enough bandwidth to do that. So the Little Theater in Los Alamos agreed to take it on half-time. And I volunteered to help with that. So I became more and more involved with projects that Bob was leading. And he asked me also to play some parts in some of these readings. What really strikes me about Bob is his willingness to take leadership and to encourage people who might be sort of standing back and wondering what to do, and encourage them in the theater arts. So a friend of mine, Kate Ramsey, decided to start her own theater group called Pajarito Players. Bob has been, I'm the assistant artistic director for Pajarito Players. So Bob has helped us get going, and he's donated a play. He didn't donate the play, that's not the right word, but he let us use his play gratis, and we took that play to Jemez Springs as well as Los Alamos and Taos. So what happened with Pajarito Players is that we were looking for sponsorship, and we all agreed, and Bob helped us focus on a plan that would get the Los Alamos Little Theater to be our umbrella organization. That was successful. So now we're a nonprofit like the Los Alamos Little Theater is, and he provided the royalty-free script. That's what I was trying to say about about the play that he had us use. Let's see. We at Pajarito Players think of Bob as our angel who helped our dream become a reality. And I'll let other people speak now. Thank you.
Hi. So I've known Bob and Susan since they drove into town almost, within days. And we've been great friends over the years. I have one wonderful story to share. Bob and I were both part-time at the lab about the same time, and a couple of times we shared rides for kids to the same babysitter for a while. And one afternoon after I'd gotten home, the kids had their naps and we were going back up to town from White Rock to probably a pediatrician appointment or something. I'm driving along and we get up by the CMR building and we're driving along. And my daughter Krista, who is maybe 2.5, is in the back seat. And we're driving along. She says, "Cryogenics, Mama." And I said, "What?" Who knew? My daughter knew all about cryogenics.
That was Lynn Johnson, by the way.
My name is John Bartlett. My message is very short. I just want to say thanks, Bob, and everyone else, the Pareto players, and everything it takes to get those plays together. Frequently, they're always entertaining, their ideas, they enrich the community. The discussions are as long as and as interesting as the plays, as you know, on all sides. And I just want to personally say thanks.
I'm Ellen Ben-Naim, and I have known Bob pretty much since we moved here in '96. And Bob's public contributions, I think, are pretty well known from the descriptions today and what was printed, but what might not be as well known is more of the things he does quietly in private. I don't know how many of you know the Yiddish term a mensch, but that word was invented for Bob. Bob is just an all-around good person, and he models that and teaches that for all of us. He does things that we would put in the category of the mitzvah patrol, looking for opportunities to do good deeds and just doing them. A little story I'll share. This was probably about 17 years ago, and we had a freak hailstorm that caused all kind of havoc in my yard. And I was home alone with 2 young kids. My husband was on travel, and I just happened to mention that it was just going to have to wait till my husband got home because I was 8 months pregnant and was not going to be able to deal with the down branches and the crab apples all over my front yard and sidewalk. And later on that day, I'm sure I had taken a nap, being the stage I was at, and I get up and look outside my dining room window, and there's Bob cleaning up that mess, just quietly going about doing a good deed. And that sums up Bob Benjamin.
All right, well that was a good segue, sort of. Nice transition. So, my name's Josh. I'm my parents' son. Mitzvah in Judaism is defined as a good deed, typically done from a religious duty. If there's one word that would capture my dad or grandpa or Bob, it would be that. There's so many areas of his life where he says, "How can I help?" Growing up in White Rock, I have a lot of memories of my dad volunteering to teach classroom lessons to myself and my friends on inventions and physics. And he was so gifted at simple explanations and patience that actually a few times my friends would call and ask to speak directly with my dad for help on their math and physics problems, just bypassing me. He's continued to help educate young minds by teaching lessons in fluid instability along with my mom at my son Levi at his school in Denver and his classmates. And over the past decades, it's been really inspirational watching his transition from laboratory scientist to an accomplished playwright. In fact, in the article, it's interesting to me that the science part is such a small part, if any. His talent for writing and producing senior theater has really benefited Los Alamos as well as the region and even nationally. Among all of his acts of service, the ones that I'm most grateful for, though, are his daily mitzvahs with family. He's really shined in his role as a caregiver for my mom, and he shares his wisdom in caregiver support groups. And certainly as grandpa, best known for his steel-cut oats, he seems to have boundless energy for his 4 grandchildren, some of whom were up there, but I guess they're off doing other things. So to a man of many mitzvahs, we congratulate you on your well-deserved award as a Los Alamos Living Treasure.
I'm Jody Shepard, and I was sitting there thinking, they haven't mentioned one thing about Bob. So over the years, the last few years, Bob has graciously asked me, would you come over and read the play? Let me hear it done. And I thought, oh, how nice, you know. So I would read the play and like something or not like something. Most of the time I liked everything. And I thought, well, that's nice the way he's so graciously saying, you've got a point there. Well, yes, I like the way you did that. And I thought, what a nice thing. And then last year, I foolishly decided that after 50 years of theater, maybe I could write a play. Well, different world. All of a sudden, I didn't want anyone messing with even one word of my little 10-minute play. And I thought, oh, that's the difference. Bob is gracious and kind, and he listens to everybody, and you, Jody, won't allow anybody to do anything. So all those 50 years when I've garbled up somebody's dialogue, I thought, well, it's payback time. This isn't about me, it's about what a wonderful man Bob is and how kind and forgiving and incredibly talented. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for sharing those remarks. Now Becky Ortell is going to help me. Bob, if you could come up for a few minutes. We have a few things for you. One is a medallion. This gets you a free lunch every December at the Senior Center. Yeah, we have a lunch, a special lunch to honor the living treasures in December, and it has your name on it. And we're also, this is one of the certificates that Marilyn Stevens has been doing the calligraphy of for many, many years. So this is yours. And then we also, I think you've all noticed the portraits up here on the wall. Well, the portraits themselves, each living treasure gets a copy of the portrait. So those are for you, Bob. And I would like it if you would take a few minutes to make a few remarks of your own. Oh, and you get the little box too. Okay? I'm going to just set these right here.
I would really like to thank the Living Treasure Committee that does an enormous amount of work to select people. I feel honored to be one of them today, but I know they put in a lot of work going through a selection process and a whole lot more work than that. So they deserve it. Also like to thank my family and many friends for coming here today. I'd like to introduce my family, starting with my wife Susan, whom more of you know than know me, of course. My son Josh, whom you just heard, his wife Lauren, their children that were up there, Levi and Lily, and my daughter Alana, back there, and her husband Tim sitting next to her there, and daughter Ella that was up there too, and Joni. Hope you're feeling better, Joni. Great. And I was trying to think as people were talking there about what it was that is my journey. And what's become clear to me from hearing those comments was I still haven't figured out what I'm going to be when I grow up. I do appreciate the kind words that were spoken. We're always curious for each living treasure to know what was their special contribution. So as you've heard, my most recent special contribution has been theater, live theater at the senior centers, which I started about 4 years ago. Actually, we did some work 12 years ago, but more recently than that. And so I just wanted to say a couple of comments about it because it's really about building community. I mean, live theater at the senior centers is about community. It's not so much about the playwright. It's probably one of the most unique contributions of Living Treasures, I expect, because I start out with a concoction of a play. I just come up with an idea, write a stage play that I'm hoping will be interesting and engaging. And then I find actors like Pat Beck, who spoke to you, who are willing to do it, and Jody also. And I hope that they believe in my fabrication enough to be willing to speak to an audience about it, which they do. Then during the talkback, as you know who have been there, I really try to get people to talk about the issues that are raised in the play, because I find that, as was mentioned, the talkback is often longer than the play itself, and certainly more interesting for me. What I found remarkable doing this is that audiences are willing to buy into this as a way to form community and start conversation. I mean, I view the plays as being sort of zany and sort of lighthearted, but people want to talk about the issues, and that's taught me a lot. And it's been a real pleasure to help form community that way and be part of community in that manner. What I've learned is that comedy is conversation's midwife. Just realized that recently myself. And gentle comedy, I find, does bring people together, and I really appreciate the community, many of whom are here, for having come and seen the plays, and have been willing to engage your imagination with my creativity somehow. I look in the mirror and say, why do I do this? I mean, why do I engage in the plays, and why do I engage in the caregiving that I do and all? And I'm thinking for the plays, perhaps as a child I didn't get to do my quota of telling tall tales. So I'm kind of making up for it now. Also, as I mentioned, I've kind of learned that the language of comedy is a good language to create community, to get seniors to have important conversations that are often difficult to start. Above all, I find that the source of my serving others is from my heart. I really see this as being an emotional experience in contrast to what I did at the laboratory for many years. And serving family, community, and friends all feels to me like it's coming from a warm place of love. So why not make a career of serving others? Thank you.
Yes, these are for you. When I interviewed Joel Dalby, I didn't know much about him. In the 1990s, we were next-door neighbors for a few years. But Joel is a very quiet and humble man, and it wouldn't surprise me if before today you didn't know much about him either. Since he retired in 1995, he has been a dedicated and consistent volunteer, usually working by himself or in a small group. He believes in the mission of Habitat for Humanity, which is a world where everyone has a decent place to live. With Bert Dennis and John Tubb, he built improvements to many homes in the valley. Often, they were building indoor bedrooms and bathrooms. Later, the three built ramps for people who couldn't access their own homes and didn't have the resources to pay for the materials or a contractor. He regularly hauls usable materials from Los Alamos remodeling projects down to the Habitat Restore, where these items are then sold. And that money then goes to be used to build other homes. Sometimes he is picking up furniture or other items from someone who is downsizing to a smaller home. For many years, he has regularly been driving people off the hill to medical appointments in Espanola, Santa Fe, and Albuquerque. This isn't everything that we talked about, and some of you know about other things that he probably didn't mention to me because he's a very humble man. But I was struck by what a generous man he is. He specifically mentioned how grateful he is that because he has a pension from the laboratory and the time, he has the good health, he is able to do these things that he does for others. So now I invite those of you who know Joel to please come up and share some of what you know about him with the rest of us. And like we did with Bob, just come on forward and take a seat and then come up to the podium, please. Oops, sorry.
I'm Karen Tellentire, Joel's daughter, and on behalf of myself and my brother and my sister and all of Joel's grandchildren, I want to say that when I read the write-up, I thought, well, there's lots of other things Dad does that aren't in here, including supporting my mom and a bunch of things he's done. But then I thought, but we were brought up that, well, that's just what you're supposed to do. There's nothing special about it. And I think maybe that's one of the biggest things Dad has done, is to convince us that that's just what you're supposed to do, and it's normal life.
I'm Mary Venable. Can you see me? Congratulations, Joel. I remember 25 years ago, those angels in overalls came and helped Doug Venable clean out his garage. Ugly work, but they just whipped right through it. They're always helping people. As far as going to Albuquerque for a medical appointment, most people that are in that situation is pretty serious. It's not funny to have to go down there for a medical appointment. But if Joel's your driver, he's a man of few words, but he knows when to talk and when to be quiet. It's very comforting for those people that have to make that trip. The other thing I want to mention was his truck. His truck is also a senior. And lots of times Helen helps him load it when they're going down to Espanola. I have watched him load that with furniture that perhaps meant a great deal to the person that's parting with it. They have memories too, but it's going off to Espanola or the Valley for a new home for someone that's never had a home. It's a very special service that you're doing, but he's always sensitive to the fact maybe the person parting with something has deep emotional attachment to it. Thank you, Joel.
My Sarah Chandler, and I'm the director of the volunteer office. And I was thinking as you were speaking that perhaps if you're not the director of the volunteer office, you may not be acquainted with all the many different things that Joel does because he is such a modest person and he is an unassuming character in our community. So you might not be aware of all the different ways that he provides service like we are in the volunteer office. But most particularly, I think I work with Joel on these help rides, and I call and talk to Helen all the time, and she puts them on, and I ask a lot of big asks. In the paper, it said that Joel will take someone off the hill for a medical appointment about once a month. I laughed out loud at home. Is not remotely how many times a month Joel goes off the hill for a medical appointment. To give you an example, he drove about 680 miles in the month of April to take people to medical appointments off the hill. They could be going to radiation, they could be seeing a cardiologist. And let me say, if they're going to Albuquerque, they may have multiple appointments throughout the day. So you would take a client, wait, take them to another location, wait, and then find yourself coming home in the afternoon traffic. And so one appointment a month is quite the understatement. I have a feeling most of the information that we get about the volunteering he does is probably a similar level of understating both the impact and the heart of what he does. But for me as the director of the volunteer office, calling and asking on behalf of people who I know have real need, who are in tough places, I really want to find them help. I think about them at home and I worry, will I find someone who can take them? And so when I call Joel, I know he's going to really try to make it work. He looks and he says, let me think. And then he really tries to work it out because he's invested in making it happen for these people. Some of them are gracious and lovely and enjoyable to spend the day with. Other people are not. And other people are suffering or it's not their nature to be so gracious when receiving a gift like that. And Joel takes them anyway. He takes whomever needs it. I think it's a lot easier for us to give to people who are so pleasant and gracious, but Joel will give wherever it's needed. And I know it means a lot to the clients because they tell me so. So I wish I could make a long line, Joel, out the door of everybody who you have touched, people who have no one nearby or no one nearby who is invested in their care. I know that it's uncomfortable for Joel to be on the spot, so I'll try to be brief, but when I was thinking about him this morning and this opportunity that we have to recognize him, I think instead of the focus being on, oh, Joel wouldn't want us to be staring at him and talking about him, but to think about what can we do with this example, this beautiful light that he treats as his daughter said, this is just the way you behave. He would want us to be sure that that value is knit in our own hearts, in that of our children and our grandchildren. This example that he's left for the community is ours to ensure. And so that's what I'm taking away from it as a mother of teenagers is how do I make sure that they understand that this is who we are as a community, and to be able to take this legacy on. Thank you for that example, Joel.
I'm June Gladney, and I am on the board of LA Cares. And Joel has been one of our food movers for, I think, at least 5 or so years, maybe even more. I know Jeannie Butler works closely with him, and she's sorry. I'm sure she can't be here to honor him today. But Joel, once a Thursday morning, once a month, he takes that truck, and I think that truck should be also a living treasure, seriously. And Helen, and they go and they go to one of our warehouses and they bring back all these boxes of food that we're going to pack for distribution. And I mean, these are big boxes full of sugar and flour and juice, and I mean, it's heavy work, and he just makes it look easy. I just admire that so much, is how easy he is able to throw stuff all over the place and get it out of the truck. So I just want, on the behalf of the board, make sure everybody realizes how he has an important role in what we do, and we help about 75 families a month, so that's a big impact in our community, and we so appreciate it, and we so appreciate his truck and his wife.
Well, good afternoon. Most people know me, but I'm also president. I'm David Sutton. I'm also president of the board for Habitat for Humanity. Speaking of the mic, huh? Habitat for Humanity of Espanola Valley was founded in 1994, about 25 years ago. Joel became involved pretty quickly, about 19 years ago. He was part of the Wednesday guys. They volunteered on Wednesday to work on new Habitat house construction or other home repair projects Habitat had going on. They built a fair amount of wheelchair ramps all across the valley. The first restore in New Mexico became a reality here outside of Espanola in Arroyo Seco in 1998. When the need for volunteers to pick up donations was requested in 1999, Joel showed up with that trusty truck, filled that need. He had some helpers here and there, including his wife Helen. And speaking of Helen, she's been an incredible volunteer as well. Not only helping Joel physically, but can you imagine waking up and finding sofas, lamps, lawnmowers, bags of donations in your front yard, in your driveway, or even at your front door? They load it into their truck, or they even store it in the garage until they have a full load to bring to Habitat. Joel was a volunteer. He averaged around 10 hours a week for 20 years, for a total of around 9,600 hours. You should know there have been times when Joel made 2 trips that same day, or even 3 to 4 trips a week. Generally, he delivers about 2 truckloads per week. And would you believe he'll even purchase donuts and drinks for the store staff and volunteers. He's always cheerful, and I know he looks forward to seeing Joel, everyone looks forward to seeing Joel and the great donations that he brings. There's no question about Joel's contribution to the local Habitat affiliate, and it's definitely part of Habitat's success. As you may know, donations are sold in our Restore, thrift shop, and furniture store. These sales directly impact our ability to build new homes, perform much needed home repairs, and our Brush with Kindness projects. While Joel has been fond of remarking to Habitat's executive director, who is unable to make it tonight, I'm sorry, over the years, I bet you'll get at least 50 cents for this. I have no doubt the donations delivered by Joel have earned us hundreds of thousands of dollars, and Mr. Joel Dalby, he's just priceless. All right, we've been able to purchase 3.5 acres for our subdivision with most of the stuff that Joel has brought us. We have built 12 new homes, started over 60 home repairs, and just in the last year, 7 Brush with Kindness projects. So I'd like to thank Joel personally, and this is Curtis, our store manager, Curtis Cruz. He works with Joel way more than I do, but being the president, I got volunteered to do this. So here's Curtis, and we actually brought some things for Joel.
These are shirts. One for Howard.
Okay. So.
Hi again, my name is Curtis Cruz. I'm the store manager here at Habitat for Humanity. And I'll make it fast. I just want to thank Joel for all the work he does. He's an amazing person. Like they said, without him, we would not be Habitat for today. And I just want to thank him for everything him and his wife Helen do. and we're just gonna express how much he does for us. I just want to thank him and have a good day with everything as well. And I have a shirt for him as well from the Habitat. You can hold it up. Okay. Let's give him a shirt. I'm gonna spill it. Which one is this shirt? I have one for Helen and one for Joel, and some of the staff and our board presidents and them signed for, board members actually signed for them. For Joel. Just things for Joel that he had signed for us. And this is for one for Joel.
Good afternoon. I'm Bill Redmond, and Joel is one of the dearest friends and one of the most beautiful people I've ever met in my entire life. You know, in Los Alamos here, we're pretty precise about numbers. Everybody agree with that? Like real precise about numbers. We like to know specific numbers, but there's only one person that knows the number that I have in mind, and I don't have that number. Only God knows the number of people whose lives were touched because of Joel. Joel is like the proverbial pebble that goes into the pond, and it just ripples and ripples and ripples. He actually leads a double life. You see his work here in northern New Mexico. You see his work with Habitat and taking veterans to the hospital. But Joel has also participated in launching a seminary in China. It's an underground seminary. This guy is working for an underground organization, and you guys didn't know about that. We now have more than 3,000 that have graduated from that seminary, and they're dispersed through all the provinces in China. And the kind of love that Joel demonstrated with his support, his prayers, his concern over more than a decade, those seminarians will take that love that was started with Joel, and it will ripple across China in ways that you and I will never know. There will be lives that will be transformed. There will be lives that will be saved because of his self-sacrificial love. I know of no other person that is more Christ-like in his love than Joel. And Joel, I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. And what a blessing you've been in my life. Thank you.
So my name is Alicia Dolby, and I don't know if any of you would know this, but Joel and Helen adopted me when they were 60 years old. Yeah, that was 27 years ago. And I just want to say thank you, Mom and Dad, for your sacrificial love and for putting up with me through some really rough times of my life, and also taking care of my daughter. And just thank you for all of those years that you used to pastor all the churches around northern New Mexico when they needed a substitute pastor. That really had an impact in my life. And just, I thought I should say thank you guys. So, thank you.
I knew there were a few things, Joel, that you didn't tell me. Joel, would you like to come up here, please? Joel. this is the calligraphy, the certificate that proves that you're a living treasure. And here's your copy of the photograph. And would you like to make a few remarks?
Perfect.
Gary, if you just go right ahead, please.
I can hold those for you.
They told me I didn't have to say anything, and I said, that's good. Because I had a very sharp college teacher who told me one time, if you have nothing to say, you should say it. But I want to thank the committee, and especially I want to thank Kyle for her work and writing up about me. I think she did a very good job, so there's nothing more I need to say. Thank you all.
I would also just like to give another shout out to Jim Gautier. Didn't he do a beautiful job with these portraits? Bob Thompson shadowed him this year on doing all the photography because Jim might not be able to be doing it much longer, if at all. So it's good to know that we have someone in reserve ready to take that on. Okay, there's a special place in my heart for people like Denny Erickson. When he retired from the lab in 2006, he became very involved in the Los Alamos Historical Society and several important projects for Los Alamos County. The write-up I prepared for the papers only gives you a little bit of the detail of what he did on the History is Here campaign for the Historical Society and the two big projects that he worked on for the county. These efforts require numerous meetings, phone calls, and negotiations, and trying to do it all while caring about and considering the opinions and values of the other people involved. The wheels of government grind slowly, and Denny hung in there on the Trinity Site project, where the marketplace stands today, and the revitalization of White Rock along the highway from Sherwood Boulevard to Rover Boulevard. Some people refer to Denny as the unofficial mayor of White Rock because of his efforts to see the White Rock master plan developed and carried out. Denny is always trying to give the credit to someone else, and he's right. Nothing much gets done alone. In fact, I think all of these people have said, and in other ceremonies have said, they couldn't do what they do without the support of their families and their friends. Efforts like those that Denny has made require patience, perseverance, and time. And Denny, with the help and support of others, committed himself to seeing these projects through. I've sat through a few meetings myself, and that's why there's a special place in my heart for people like Denny. We all will benefit for a long, long time from the lasting contributions that he has made. So now I'd like to invite those of you in the audience who have something to share about Denny to please come up, fill these seats again, and share a few of what you know about Denny. Because like I said, the write-ups in the program and in those papers just barely scratch the surface.
Hi, my name is Heather McClenahan, and I have the, I guess, distinct privilege of being part of all three of these men's lives. I've been close to Bob because he actually wrote some plays that were nuclear related, and when I was director of the Historical Society, now retired 2 days, we worked together on that and talked about nuclear issues. I've gone to church with Joel for 20 years, I guess, and had no idea his incredible work. I knew incredible work that he did within our congregation, but not within our community, and so thank you, Joel. And Denny, I don't even know where to start. The story about, there's so many stories about Denny, but as the president of the Historical Society, he was an incredible leader, As the co-chair of the History is Here campaign, he was out in California a couple of times. He had maybe not so much success with Harold Agnew, trying to get him to donate to the campaign, but he knocked on the door of Clay Perkins, and the Historical Society now owns the Hans Beta House as a result. So your work has just been incredible, Mary Lou. I have never been able to thank you enough for all of the time that you've given to let us have him. And so thank you. Thank you.
Hello, Los Alamos. Greetings from San Diego. My name is Matt Erickson. I'm the oldest son. I have a little resemblance with the nose, the hair. So I've heard I'm the best looking of the three children, but I'm not at least humble. But when I read the article in the Post a few weeks ago, it kind of brought to mind some of the early memories from Los Alamos, and when we first moved here. We moved here in a blizzard. We didn't know what Ashley Pond was, but I remember my mom traipsing me and my sister, were real little at the time, across the pond. It was frozen, thank goodness. And we know what it was. And later that year, when it warmed up, we were hiking down to, I think, the overlook down White Rock. We had no idea what cactus was. And on the way back, I fell flat on my face into a cactus patch. Ow! They spent hours picking spines out of me for what seemed like an eternity. So ever since then, Dad, I know what cactus is. But just a few notes on memories and qualities of my father. First and foremost, as a Christian, and I think volunteerism comes from that. Very humble. Sweat equity was a real early thing in our life. We used to go and clean up the church, paint. I think I painted that church probably 3 or 4 times. Even after high school, I was employed there, painted it again. But really on, and now, as I'm a member of my own church, I've been volunteering and playing drums in my church now for 20 years now. He's a fierce competitor. I don't know if you guys understand that so well, but as we were growing up, basketball was his passion. He coached us growing up, but there was a hoop in front of our house. And we used to have some very spirited games out front. And as we get a little older, he would keep beating us. We keep getting a little older. The gap would start to lessen. So AJ is his latest victim. When he comes to San Diego, they like to go play horse, and I think AJ's beaten a couple times, but I think the last one, I think Dad, you won, did you not? Yeah. I remember also when Janet was like 5 years old, he sat down and played checkers. And do you think he let her win? No. He crushed her. He crushed her like, yeah. But she learned. She learned how to play. Next time around, she got better, and she got better. And that's something I think I'll always remember. And now he likes to watch his grandkids play. He was just out in San Diego last week to watch AJ play volleyball. He's got a really high standard of excellence. He's that conscience on my shoulder a lot. I mean, it's funny, sometimes it's to a fault though. We had to have household projects around the house. We tried to build these retaining walls in our old backyard. And after, well, years of trying and perfection, I think he finally got a contractor to finish that, right? But there's another time when I think my mom had taken Wendy and Scott to Minnesota, and we had this kit that was for a go-kart. And we finally got to build that thing, but I wanted that thing done so I can go down the hill. And just said, patience, we're gonna build it, we're gonna sand it, we're gonna paint it, we're gonna sand it. Oh, come on, man. And finally, we got to do it, and the thing was awesome. I rode that thing for a long, long time. I also remember real early on, there was a 3rd grade report I had to do, and I think it was just a report on New Mexico. And as usual, as a kid, you leave that stuff till later, right? And it was 2 days before it was due, and my dad looked at that and he said, I think you can do a little better. And so we worked on it hard, and I got A+ on the report. I think I still have that somewhere, actually. But I think also in terms of the way I view my own career now and just holding myself to a very high standard, all comes from him. I think last is probably his thirst for knowledge. He reads voraciously, sometimes 3 to 4 books at a time. And we've got so many books in our house, and we come to their house, they're upstairs stuffed in closets and drawers, and it's everywhere. I quiz him sometimes. I mean, if we're reading the same book, I quiz him. And what about that story? What about that? Yeah, he knows that story. So he's not just like glancing through it, but he reads them and memorizes them. He has a card catalog and the whole 9 yards. So, but that thirst for knowledge comes from different places. I remember early on when I was young, Edward Teller was at our house. I don't remember much other than this crazy physicist with hair coming out of his ears and stuff, but I didn't know who that was until much later. And I understood that he was always asking, always questioning, and now I think my kids see that too. He's always asking questions. So we have a lot of names that we use for him in our house. Denny, Dad, Papa Den, or Big Tall Swede. But the latest one is, well, we're calling him BLT, for Big Living Treasure. Thanks.
I'm Thelma Hahn, and one thing I've noticed about all 3 of these gentlemen is what wonderful families they've had. I think of Bob and Susan, and Josh, and Alana. I think of Joel and Helen and their family and contribution. And I think of Denny and Mary Lou with Matt, Wendy, and Scott. And they are, besides a living treasure to us, they are to their families. I'm here to talk about Denny as a fellow member of the Bethlehem Lutheran Church. They've been there ever since they moved into town. They're good Lutherans, but above all, they're good Christians. They're faithful people. Denny has filled in many, many places in our church where there was an opening that needed to be done, and he was there. Besides singing in the back, he always had to be in the back part of the choir, not because of how he sang, but I think because of how tall he was. But we just appreciate him. I taught Sunday school with him, with the catechism kids that were 13 and 14, and that's a wonderful age, as many of you can remember. But he was always there and gave a bit of his good humor and support, and we at Bethlehem love both of you.
I'm Cynthia Biddlecombe. I came to town about 17 years ago to work at Denny's church. Denny and Mary Lou have been very dear friends of mine over the years, and I was impressed as I got to know them that Denny was actually serving as the science officer for a governor, I believe, who wasn't even your own political party. Is that correct? And that impressed me, that he was serving the state of New Mexico in that way. Over the years, I came to realize that my alma mater, California Lutheran University, was asking people in the convocation, like me, if we knew anyone who could be a regent for the school. And I thought, well, I know a white man who doesn't have a whole heck of a lot of money, but he would be a great gift to the school. He's the one who said the thing about money. I asked Denny if he would consider it, and he said, oh, surely not. Denny is completing his 4th term as a regent of California Lutheran University, and I thank you for all that you've done for that school. as they started to build up their science buildings and their whole program. So thank you, dear friend.
Can you see me? I'm glad to see Matt here today because that's how I first met Denny and Mary Lou. Matt and our son John were drummers in high school, and they needed a ride to Phoenix to go to music camp. So Denny and Mary Lou gave them their van, and we gave Denny and Mary Lou our checker to drive for a week or 10 days, whatever it was. So that's how I first met them. And Matt, I'm glad to see you. And John sends his regrets. He's in a rehearsal this afternoon. When I was president of the Historical Society, Denny and I got together on a bench out there at Fuller Lodge, and we talked about dreams for the Historical Society being an important part of Los Alamos community. And we had visions. He had watched how in San Diego, the Historical Society had made a difference. And so we had dreams. We dreamed together. We brought the 5 former laboratory directors and the present director together. We did lots of things together. And I would have many things I'd like to talk to you about, but this is one that I don't think most people know. Heather talked about some of the big things he did for the society. But when the families of Dr. Robert Oppenheimer and General Leslie Groves came to the dedication of the 2 statues of the 2 men in May of 2011, Denny invited them to a tour of the Historical Museum and afterwards to see Helene Sudam in the Oppenheimer House. Not long afterward, the granddaughter of General Groves called me to offer the prized family portrait of General Groves to give to Los Alamos. The portrait, painted by Albert Murray, is a gem. I hope you've seen it in the Historical Museum. Mr. Murray is considered the best American portrait painter since John Singer Sargent. That portrait could have been given to the National Art Museum in Washington, D.C., or West Point, or Oak Ridge, but it came to Los Alamos because of the welcome our county officials, notably Sharon Stover over here, who is chairman of our county council, members of the Historical Society, with Heather at the helm, volunteers of the Historical Statues Committee, and the townspeople gave to the Groves family. The Groves family had never had a family reunion. There were 2 from England. They came from Massachusetts, Louisiana, and the West, Arizona. And they were surprised. They didn't know what to expect. What they expected was love and welcome. And a lot of that was because of Denny. So I hope that you will go over to the new museum exhibit and enjoy that precious painting that Los Alamos got because of Denny and others.
That was Nancy Bartlett. And I'm Jennifer Bartlett, and here's my father, John Bartlett. For Los Alamos, Denny has led in resourcing and improving our lab, our history, our economy, and opportunities. But what may be less known is that he has done the same for people one by one. Come to think of it, perhaps tending the individual is how he leads so well, the gamut. In his native Upper Heartland, Minnesota, crisis in a blizzard is averted by the grace of a good neighbor named Denny. I first met Denny when I was a kid at church. He was the usher or deacon stewarding us to the Holy Sacrament. How apt a memory for today. His mindful spirit shows in every encounter. Whatever and whoever receives Denny's attention is sure to benefit, to be guided to a better condition. On countless occasions, whether we were facing a challenge in the hospital, serious challenges in the hospital, or in presenting a new big idea to an audience, or in gathering resources for a public purpose, Denny has been one to appear on the scene with the rare combination of excellent judgment, inspiring creativity, resourcefulness, and caring encouragement that has made a world of difference to my father, to my mother, and to me, and to the missions with which we are concerned. Once one has been the beneficiary of such a fine affiliation and friend, she will soon wonder how Los Alamos has ever did anything without him. And that's how we all feel today, isn't it? So that's why it's fitting to honor Denny Erickson as a living treasure of Los Alamos. Congratulations.
And I second all of that.
Thank you. I'm Fran Birding, who was on council when Denny Erickson was the chairman of the White Rock Master Plan. And I was very glad he was chairman, because there were an awful lot of ups and downs, plans falling through, plans being revised, and he had perseverance. He would stay and stay and stay when most people had given up and just disbanded the committee. But he stayed with it, and because of that, White Rock has what we have now, the refurbished and enlarged senior center, the library, the student center, the visitor center, and all of those things which were part of the plan, which weren't, they kept being mixed up and here and there and down, but he persevered. And as I say, we would not have what we have in White Rock if it were not for Denny. So he is indeed a living treasure for all of us. Thank you.
My name is Sharon Stover, and I just wanted to say, Denny, thank you. Thank you for coming, you and Mary Lou, to a party that we were giving away, going for friends that were leaving our town way back in 2006. Little did I know then what a good friend, teacher, and mentor you have been to me and also to Stephen throughout these years. One of the most takeaways for me is your ability to listen to people. And you have a knack for connecting those dots and bringing all those different sectors together. And very unassuming, as your son had pointed out earlier. You have a way of making folks feel special for whatever they are involved in, that they are the person that they have your attention. Thank you for making our community so much better. And Mary Lou, I got an opportunity to meet you through Denny, and you have a beautiful family, and you have fostered that lovingness throughout our family as well. Thank you both. Thank you, Denny.
So good afternoon. I am Nicolai Redu-Ferry, and I'm blessed to be one of the pastors at Bethlehem. So glad you're at our church, Denny and Mary Lou. I mean, really. Those things Thelma said about how blessed we are with the many roles that you have given in our community has been a great blessing for us. And many of you have heard this statement where, for those of us who are Christians, we say, preach the gospel at all times, and if necessary, use words. So with Denny, he not only serves in so many beautiful ways, and you all have heard in all the many ways throughout this community and at the lab and within our congregation, but also through your wisdom and through your ability to slow us all down and to be patient. Especially, friends, for those of you, raise your hand if you've ever been part of a new construction project. Yeah, doesn't that bring joy? Oh, that's what I'm here for you, right? So within Bethlehem, we were very, very blessed before 2005 to have our Place of Grace, which is where our library and gathering space is, which many of you have been in, and it's glorious. And Denny led that. And now, friends, yeah, in January, the snow came. Yeah, and you probably heard that our roof collapsed in our sanctuary. And Denny was wise and bold and persistent enough to say, let me be a part of that. And so our group is called the New Possibilities Working Group, and that really is about who you are, Denny. With your questions, with your wonderings, with your connections, it's all about what is possible in our lives to bring new life and to bring joy. And for that, my friend, we are very blessed. So thank you.
Excuse me, my allergies a little bit. I'm Rafi. I used to work at the Los Alamos History Museum, and that's when I was first introduced to Denny several years ago. And the thing that I take away from Denny the most is that he's not afraid to dream big and have a big vision and take action toward it. And we saw components of that a little earlier. Your son talked about your thirst for books and knowledge. A lot of stuff has come up about your questions, and to me, I remember that too when I first met you. You have this sort of relentless curiosity. And then Sharon touched on how you put these dots together, and to me that's creativity. And to me, creativity is getting disparate dots and finding a way to connect them. And the competitiveness that your son talked about, I see that as your drive to actually accomplish those things. And so that I saw early on. He was one of the first people I met when I was in Los Alamos. And someone once told me that people who dream big don't take action. But Denny proves otherwise. Thank you very much, Denny, for doing that.
I'm David Horpedahl. I was born and raised here in Los Alamos and known Denny for, I'm not sure, at least 30 years. And one of the most amazing things is that he asks a lot of questions. He's taken pebbles in White Rock and built it back into a real community when everybody else had given up on it. He's a very generous and humorous guy, and just puts every politician to shame in that no one knows that he's essentially knocked on everybody's door or asked everybody's opinion and then carefully thought about what the community needs to make it actually grow instead of just band-aiding it. And those are the things that make him a true treasure of Los Alamos. Thank you, Denny.
Some of you I don't know, I am Mary Lou Erickson, and on a cold and snowy day in January of 1972, we drove up the hill in a brand new Ford Grand Torino station wagon. And we had previously sold our Mustang. We had one of the first owners of a Mustang, 1965, and with our 2 young kids, and I was pregnant. Matt was probably 4 when he was, I think, 2. And so we came up here, and we hadn't arranged for housing when we first got here, so we stayed in the Los Alamos Inn for 2 weeks. And Denny would go off, he was a postdoc, so he would go off to the lab every day. And we had had snow in North Carolina, so the kids had winter clothing, and I would bundle them up and we would walk across the pond. I did not know it was a pond. You've heard that from Matt already. I did not know. I think when I heard that, I almost went into labor right there. But so Denny and I grew up together in the same neighborhood in Minnesota. We went to the same schools, the same high school, the same church, the same college. In Minnesota, there was a lake on every corner, snow in the winter and mosquitoes in the summer. And we had many friends, not only from church, but around the neighborhood that we did a lot of activities with in Minnesota, like going to St. Croix River and hiking the rocks and building bonfires. In the winter, we would build bonfires on the lake. So we began dating when we were in high school. And as I recall, it took him 6 months to kiss me. We began our married life in Knoxville, Tennessee. Denny was a grad student, and I started my first job as a nurse in pediatrics. So his major professor, unfortunately, took a job at the University of North Carolina. Oh, I'm sorry, I back up. Matt was born in Knoxville. He's our oldest. And so Professor Roberts took a job in North Carolina, so he packed up his doors and we moved to North Carolina. I began work at the hospital there also, and our daughter was born there. So having sold our Mustang, like I said, we piled into our station wagon and came out to Los Alamos. I've been told, our pastor tells us quite often at memorial services that our lives are a facet, like a diamond. And so I just wanted to dwell on three things of Denny today. And the number one thing is the fact that we've been lifelong Lutherans. And you've heard Pastor Nicoli and others speak about that. And it's been our joy to do that in this community. So Denny became an active member of the self-help community when we came in 1965 or 1972, or 1973. And as Thelma said, he was very active. He's been very active at Bethlehem. He's served on committees both locally and synod-wise and nationally. So family-wise, Denny has 2 brothers and 1 sister. All of them are in Seattle, so we're kind of the black sheep in that we're far from Seattle. We have 3 children. Matt, you've met, and he's married to Mary, our daughter-in-law. They have 3 children, Janet, who's 25, Andrew is 17 and a junior in high school, and our granddaughter Hannah is almost 19, and she's a freshman at Syracuse University. Denny grew up with 2 brothers and 1 sister. One of his brothers actually happens to be married to my sister, so we're very close. And then Wendy, our daughter, is married to Greg Hirons, who also grew up here in Los Alamos. And Greg is a primary care physician up in the Denver area, and they have 1 son, Sam, who is 15. Scott is married to Michelle, fondly known as Shelley, and Shelley was unable to be with us today. And I don't have a lot of time to tell you about all of their accomplishments and whatnot, but I'm sure that you can probably guess. So the second thing about Denny is that he loves books. And it's absolutely true what Matt said. When we moved into our house on Brighton Loop, there was a room that could be an all-purpose room or a study, and so that was one reason we bought it, because we were coming out the seams at the other house on Hoyle Loop and on Page Loop. I guess we like loops. So in this house, he has books everywhere. They're on his bedside stand, they're piled. Some of them he's read, some of them he intends to read. The study has these beautiful bookcases. They're full and overflowing. And he always has something he reads. He has been a subscriber to the New York Times book review for years. However, at this time, he is behind on his reading. They count him once a week. So I think he's caught up now to December. And then some of you have mentioned also about his questions. He loves to ask questions. When you first meet him, he will not only, he probably will get your name, but he will also say, and what is your story? He wants to know about you. If he's working on a project for the county or for a church, he has a million questions, which nobody else has, which always gets him far. Our grandchildren are part of this story because they always kind of groan and roll their eyes. Oh dear, here comes Papa Danny's going to ask us some more questions. And maybe, just a little maybe, I have a story about Janet when she was in kindergarten. Her parents went for their first conference with a teacher. And they were told that she's a good student, but she's very quiet. And so the teacher said to her one day, Janet, could you speak a little louder? And Janet said, could you come a little closer? That line is now a family tradition. But my favorite all-time question is, will you marry me?
Okay, Denny, it's your turn. Here you go, sir. Looks good on you. And I don't know if any of you can see these, but they're truly lovely. That's for you. And we'll just, Becky will hang on to them. I want you to say a few words.
Yes, my first words is, who is this person? I'm not sure I know who it is. I want to start with a reflection on one of my longtime mentors and special friends, Bill Deal, when he was recognized as a living treasure some years ago. And he said, living treasure. He says the best part of that phrase is the adjective living. It is important to be standing here and living, and that is certainly true. Not just the 3 people being recognized, but the special program that recognizes the contributors to this very special community. Kudos to my recognized colleagues, Bob Benjamin and Joel Dalby. You'd be interested to know that Bob and I were longtime colleagues in a group that was in Ancho Canyon, known as the Dynamic Testing Division's country club, because of the creative things that we were able to do and the amazing things we were able to do with the kind of things that are done in Chateau physics. I want to thank the committee, especially Kyle and Jim and Marilyn and Jean, for the special things they do. I want to thank the nomination team that got me to this position, Chip Keller, John Rumner, and Heather McClanahan, Nancy and John Bartlett, Sig Hecker, and Paul Hendris. I thank you very much for the confidence that you have in me and what you said. I want to thank my family, who Mary Lou introduced. I especially want to thank my wife and love of my life, and my partner, Mary Lou. I'm actually kind of a hard person to be attached to. I'm always overcommitted. In retirement, I picked the things I wanted to do rather than the things that other people were having me do, but overcommitted is the way I work. And I'm probably most of the adjectives that were used to describe me, but she has had the patience and the love and the respect and the true partnership to keep me going. And our kids and our grandchildren have been such a blessing. You need to know that our daughter Wendy and her husband Greg and our grandson Sam are not here this weekend because Greg is fighting a battle with cancer and is in a hospital in Denver, and they're, as a family, they're where they have to be at this point. I want to tell you that standing here and being recognized is not something I strive for or look forward to, but I also want to tell you that I really enjoy being a living treasure of Los Alamos. I'm not one that likes to take the spotlight. In fact, I've worked a lifetime of avoiding the spotlight, but I keep getting there somehow, some way. And it's because of most of the things that I'm involved with are team efforts. And I've been a member of many teams, be they boards, committees, task forces, panels, working groups. And it's the team together that ultimately takes us to accomplishments. And I'd much rather prefer that the teams and their accomplishments be represented publicly rather than me as a member of any of those teams. So I stand here today as a representative of many teams that have paid off through many accomplishments. You met one of my pastors, Nicolai. Pastor Nicolai came to me some time ago and said, "Denny, what makes you joyful?" So, you take the 8 to 10 second pause thinking of an answer. And I said, "Pastor, joy is not one of the characteristics of an ethnic Scandinavian who was born and raised in Minnesota with this work ethic, with self-effacing, quiet, silent. But thinking about that question, I've thought about it ever since she asked it of me. It's satisfaction that is my feeling of joy in things that teams do and succeed in. I'd like to tell you how I became recognized now as a citizen volunteer. And the lesson of the story, be careful of whose parties you go to and who you know. So as I was getting ready to retire in the late winter of 2006, Mary Lou and I were invited to the home of Sharon Stover and Steve Gerrans. We were invited as part of a going away party for mutual friends who were headed for Oak Ridge, actually. And I told Steve over a beer, I said, I'm ready to do public and community service. He said, oh, I'll keep track of that. Well, a week later, I get this call from Tony Mortallero, who's over here someplace. Right, there it is. Tony was the assistant county administrator, and he was forming up a group of citizen advisors representing both everyday people as well as school people and professionals of our community to advise him on what it would take to revitalize the so-called Trinity site, which is where the Smith's Marketplace now is. And I think without that call from Tony, which didn't take very long, thanks from Stephen who talked to Susan, who talked to Tony. A year later, a little over a year later, I get another call from Mortallero. And he wants me to serve on as an advisor to a planning effort that's going on in White Rock to rejuvenate the economic vitality of that part of the county. So I did that, and kind of 9 years later, we asked the county to retire the committee, which it did, but a lot has been done, and there's some more that is going to be done. I'm really grateful to Tony Mortallero, who ultimately became the county administrator, and for his ability or his feel for the value of citizens to participate and collaborate with the county's elected officials, with county staff, and with county contractors and whatever in making things happen. So we spent a lot of years championing many things. Finally, I want to express my appreciation to the community of Los Alamos. You've let Mary Lou and I be your friends and to be your neighbors and to integrate us into the culture and the well-being of this community. I want to tell you that this community is truly a special place. It's a place that cares, and it's a place that shares, and it's a place that strives always to be better. And with that, thank you, Los Alamos and Northern New Mexico.
Well, we could spend a lot more time talking about these three men, but we aren't going to. They're a reception planned and set up in the room right out here, and we invite you all to spend some time mingling with Bob, Joel, and Denny, and their families at the reception. We thank you so much for coming today. That concludes our formal program. We just ask that you let maybe the families try to exit the room first so they can be out there. And don't forget, there are extra copies of these if you haven't had a chance to read them. Thank you again for coming today.